Gotcha that time.
There it is.
I wasn't going to let you go on the left-hand side this time.
Well, that's because you are 100% a hater.
Well, no, because I have to be looking this way because that's where you're
I look
at for
this
me.
way, and that's where you're at. If I look this way,
Oh, well, so yours backwards anyway. All right.
yeah. If I mirror it, it won't be though.
Yeah, but you're looking straight at the screen this way, and I'm looking at the screen that way. That's why it makes sense.
Yes, it 100% makes sense. We already have a comment. Hello,
Everybody
apple
out
tree.
there is just like, oh, I'm
Every
glad we heard all
mood.
that. That's really relevant.
Glad you guys. Why couldn't you guys have that off the mic?
Behind the scenes, come on, it's time for a real show. Be
Quit
professional.
breaking the fourth wall, you goofballs. This isn't Deadpool.
He might be here one of these times. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. I
He
totes
totes in
forget.
sometimes.
He does, doesn't he? He just pops in sometimes.
He does.
So we got one in YouTube and we got one in Twitch. The Twitch, I know. The YouTube, I think I know. So hopefully he stops by too. Anyways, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 226. Today we are talking about paranormal triangles, which you guys have seen if you are watching the Facebook version. But if you're watching Twitch and or the YouTube, it's Anomalous Locations. I switched up the titles, made him mad because he doesn't like when I go in and start messing around.
I know. Clearly, I was furious. Like
Ingrain Cyclist is here. Hello, Ingrain Cyclist. He's the one. He's also here. What's up, buddy? Welcome, welcome, welcome. James Boggs. Welcome, James Boggs. Actually, James, I met James yesterday. He liked the show. Or he subscribed to our channel yesterday after I had was in Wild and Weird listening to Teresa talk about her paranormal group. So he swung on over and subscribed. So thank you for the subscription and welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are tonight talking about all sorts of amazing anomalous locations. But before we get started, it is time for my personal favorite part of the show and watching my co-host suffer in pain. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for dad jokes.
Here, let me make sure I get it right this time. It's time for dad jokes.
You know what they say about cows in the Bermuda Triangle, right? They moo in mysterious ways.
No. No.
Yo, Zach, what's going on, man?
That's enough of that. Let's just move on.
Let's move on.
Show's over, folks. Everybody go.
The jokes tell themselves. The jokes tell themselves. Get wrecked. Get wrecked. What's up, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're live from the studios, his studio, my studio. We are both in Cold, Ohio tonight for another fantastic episode of This Uncanny Earth. Welcome. I am your host, Robert Solomon, and with me over this way, which is probably this way for you guys, is my co-host, Spider, as you can see on our titles there. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? Zach said this was good. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate you for being real. Thank you, sir. Anyways, we are live. And tonight we're talking about anomalous locations. Now we're going to be talking about locations from all over the globe. So first, because it does say triangles, right? This isn't a math show. We're not going to have you find any sort of equation, right?
Pythagoras is not going to make an appearance.
Which saddens my soul because Pythagoras is an amazing person. So anyways, the first location that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to pass over to my co-host because he's going to talk about the most famous out of all of these locations, and that is the Bermuda Triangle.
That's right. Now, the Bermuda Triangle, I heard about this ever since I was a kid. And it's interesting because it's one of those things that nowadays you don't hear too much about. Like back when I was a kid, I expected this to be some worldwide thing. Like everybody's always getting lost in Bermuda Triangle. Like every day as an adult, you'd read a new story like ship lost in Bermuda Triangle. And I'm kind of disappointed that you don't.
That triangle's taking all my buddies.
But where it's at is it is in an area between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. Okay, um, and it's called the Bermuda Triangle because within a roughly triangular space, a lot of strange things happen and a lot of things go missing. You have a lot of aircraft, you have a lot of ships, and occasionally you have ships that go in full of people, and when they come out, they've got no people. And there's no indication that anything went wrong. There's no real damage to the ship other than like problems from the sea. They didn't hit anything. There's just nobody there. There's no blood. There's no bodies. There's no nothing. So, um, one of the earliest times that it was mentioned was in 1950 in September, um, and one of the most famous stories from the Bermuda Triangle is about Flight 19. Flight 19, this is something that I read as a kid. When you get those books about paranormal stuff as a kid, this was like the big one about Bermuda Triangle. So everybody would have heard about it. It's a group of five Navy torpedo bombers, five planes, and they were on a training mission. And they go over there, and there's a weird message that they get over the radio. And it's, quote, "We are entering white water. Nothing seems right. We don't know where we are. The water is green, no white." And after that, they disappeared. And nobody ever heard from them again. They've never found them since. Um, Now, the thing about it, there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of theories about why this kind of stuff happens. And some of it has to do with jet streams. Some of it has to do with particularly turbulent waters in that area due to the Earth's magnetic field and a lot of different things. Some people say that it's UFOs and there's a secret UFO base there and they don't want anybody snooping around, so they constantly steal planes and ships and whatever. Um, but what throws that again into a weird kind of relief for me is that in modern times you don't hear stories about the Bermuda Triangle anymore. Like I can't remember the last time I heard of something actually going missing in it. Probably not since I was a kid, which is kind of interesting. It could mean that it's just been something that ran its course, or maybe it's still there, or maybe now everybody knows about it enough that everybody avoids it, except for people that you might not ever hear of that aren't newsworthy.
Or maybe they found like a way to use instruments because a lot of the Bermuda Triangle itself is based on magnetic
Hmm.
uh, abnormalities in compasses and things like that, and that's why a lot of older ships, boats, planes, all that would just fly in circles and go around in circles. So they ran out of gas. A lot of the planes, I believe, I don't necessarily believe a lot of the planes disappeared because they ran out of gas and they couldn't find out how to get home. But you would think that a pilot would just go straight. At some point, you would probably hit land. At least I would think you would hit land at some point.
It's logical, but at the same time, that's a pretty big area of water. On a
You're right.
map, it doesn't look that big,
Not at all.
but when you're there, it's much bigger. And the planes, those planes,
Look
they
right here.
weren't designed for long
Here.
range. They didn't have
Look right here.
a huge amount of
Wait, are
fuel.
we here? Are we here? Is it here? I
Um,
can't read my map from here, but I think because
Farther up a little bit, because Florida.
where is this Florida right here? Like I can't see it because I'm
No,
looking at
that's
like
you're
this.
looking at like California and Mexico.
So over here. So
Yeah.
like down in here. Okay. Like this
So
area here. Sorry guys.
but yeah, the planes at the time they didn't have the fuel capacity and they weren't long range. They weren't long range bombers and stuff. They were World
Right.
War II. Like they're supposed to go off a carrier or off a nearby island, do their thing, and come back. It wasn't like B-17s and things like that, big, massive bombers. So, and I haven't heard of big things like that going through. Like I haven't heard of big passenger planes like C-130s or 737s or anything like that. But you do hear about relatively large boats. Like what was it? It's the Mary Celeste. Is that the name of it?
I think so, yes.
Mary Celeste. I'll have to look it up here because it's probably in this area here. Now we got a couple of comments.
Do got a couple comments here.
James Boggs says, "Did you know there was a message from the USS Scorpion submarine from the area of the Bermuda Triangle after it sank?" according to the U.S. Navy and John Keel. And I've heard stuff like that too before. Like they get transmissions from stuff that's lost, but then they still don't find things. Um, and it's interesting about this stuff.
Well, he says it wasn't Scorpion and Triangle, but went down closer to Europe, he believes.
Hmm.
Also, I don't know if you're going to touch on this, but are you going to talk about the pyramid?
If I can get to the
there's
right
supposedly a crystal pyramid that sits at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. There's two of these crystal pyramids. One is in the Bermuda Triangle. The other is off the coast of Japan, in the Sea of Japan. I forget how deep it is, but supposedly that's another anomalous location. I'm not going to touch on that one tonight. Because I feel like a lot of stuff that has been talked about already. So
Yeah.
I tried to like stray into like some stuff nobody knows much about. So sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just curious.
No, that makes sense. That's another one of those things that people have said that's down there that we can't, for some reason, get concrete evidence for. Like,
right.
If it was me, I'd be like, I want full-scale investigations into this area of water, and then nobody's ever really done that.
Well, I mean, you can't go down too far, the pressure and all that jazz. So,
yeah.
And some say it's Atlantis. Some say that was Atlantis, and then it
and it's still protected,
sank to the bottom of the sea. Yeah,
and or protected from people trying to disturb it because you didn't want. They were supposed to be punished, and you're not supposed to disturb the punishment. So, one other thing I'm going to mention about it is about the USS Cyclops, which is notable because it was the single largest loss of life in the history of the U.S. Navy, not related to combat. It had a crew of 309, and in 1918, after departing the island of Barbados, it was carrying a full load of manganese ore, and one of its engines had gone bad, and it went missing without a trace. Some people blame storms, some say it capsized, and some say that there was like enemy activity that wasn't noted in the area, like somebody snuck in, because it was around World War One, that kind of stuff. And two of its sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, were lost in the North Atlantic during World War II, and both ships were transporting heavy loads of metallic ore similar to that which was loaded on the Cyclops. And in all three cases, structural failure due to overloading with a much denser cargo than designed is considered the most likely cause of sinking, based on the evidence of the other two. So the Cyclops could have a natural explanation, especially in a dangerous part of the sea. But it's hard to say.
Yeah, and a lot of time, like, I don't think that they account for just random things happening either. I think
a lot of stuff that happens it's a big ocean. It is a big ocean. It's not like
it's a big ocean.
Again, looking at the map, it looks okay. You get from here to there, but then you got to consider all the different jet streams, all the different patterns in the waves. You got to consider all the possibilities of like little micro storms and microclimates and things like that. They can spring up. And considering all the air traffic and boat traffic we have going back and forth, and there are still a lot of accidents across the entirety of the oceans.
and what people don't understand how deep the ocean actually is. And when you have, a fighter pilot or a jet plane that goes down in the water, it's going to sink. And I mean, if there's nobody around, sure, the sinking might take a bit of time, but once it sinks, it's just going to keep going because it's heavier than water. It's going to keep going and going and going. So it's like,
the ocean's constantly moving. It's like that jet that went down a few years ago.
You talking about the one in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there were so many theories. They thought they saw an oil slick in one spot. They thought they found, and they've found bits and pieces of possible debris since then, but they still have never found the entirety of the plane. And you would think, oh, it's a big plane. Why can't they find it? Well, the ocean is
huge. The ocean is, it's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy thing.
So there we go. There's the Bermuda Triangle, the most famous of all triangles. What do we got next?
The isosceles.
Oh boy, I'm excited for that.
I know you are, right? Oh, there's a twofer on that.
Now you're just being obtuse.
There it is. We made it happen. There it is.
That's an old mom joke. My mom used to say
Illuminati,
stuff like that.
Illuminati, or something. I don't know what I'm doing right now. What we're going to be getting into now is we're going to be going into the Middle East, which is my favorite part of the world. My personal project is in the Middle East, actually, as many of you know, deep in the borders of Saudi Arabia and Oman. But we're not going there. We're actually going to go to 34.73 degrees north by 54.82 degrees east in the Dasht-e Kavar, Desert, known as the Rig-e-Jen, or the Dune of the Jinn. Now, as many of you know, I am a big researcher into the Jinn. I have some books and some things, and so, anyways, if I start talking, I'm going to get really into the Jinn because I love talking about it. However,
Triangles.
triangles,
Stay focused. Triangles.
rhombuses. Anyways, so located between Isfahan and the Semnan provinces in central Iran, is considered one of the most impassable deserts in the entire world. The Rig-e-Jen, or like I said before, the Dune of the Jinn, is considered the Bermuda Triangle of Iran. Local lore states, hit a minute here. We got some things here. Some comments. Cerebees is here. What's up, buddy? What's going on? Dad puns. We have dad jokes. So that's really acute, guys. Zach. James Bogg says, that's why I stay on land. You and me both, my friend. And the Ingrained Cyclist says, gin and tonic. No. Rum and Coke is what that is. Anyways, back to it. But local lore states that there is a paradise in the middle of this desert, in the center of this desert, right? And so what it is there's a forest that surrounds this desert, and in the middle is this huge lake. There is where the treasure store, the treasure house of the Jinn is, and if you make it to the center of this desert, you will be rich. Disclaimer, this uncanny earth is not responsible for that travels out to the Rig-e-Jen in search of treasure, so you cannot sue us. So prior to the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 into Iran, an armored vehicle is traversing the Rig-e-Jen, just doing reconnaissance, right? A man that would only go by the name of Nikolai tells of a frightening tale involving a mass of living sand particles. One of the men was outside of the vehicle when he saw this huge mass of sand particles. A lot of times when you're in the desert, you'll see a lot of wind. Sometimes there'll be desert storms. There'll be, all kinds of just turbulent things that happen in the desert, right? So he didn't think nothing of it. And he's watching this essentially sand tornado, make its way around the area. It starts coming towards the vehicle. He doesn't think anything of it. He decides to allow the sand particles to encompass him, right? Well, upon encompassing him, it basically eats the man, right? And the only thing left was his clothing and the items he was carrying on his person. Now, we're talking about Russian military here. So, we talk about American military being by the book, by the letter. Russian military is 100% more than that and times a million. Like, we think we're strict. They're even stricter. And that'll play into account later on as we get more into this thing. Now, the other soldiers notice that the sand transforms into something else, into almost a humanoid figure. And if you've ever done studies on the Jinn, and I have studied the Jinn for quite some time, they appear as humanoids because in the Quran, it talks about Allah making the Jinn first, before humans. He makes the Jinn first. And this sort of creation story has been repeated before or told before in South American legends, in terms of the mud people were created first and they couldn't live up to the expectations of the gods, so they were destroyed, and then humans were created after. Anyways, back on topic here. So when this thing turns to the human, it then turns back into a dune and starts moving around. It starts moving around the armored vehicle. All of the men get back into this vehicle and wait it out. The lieutenant becomes stupefied at what he's seeing. I mean, think about it. If you've never seen anything crazy, you've never seen a spirit or a ghost or anything like that, and you're watching this sand move around and take one of your men, the last thing you're going to want to do is try to logically figure this thing out. Because if you've never seen anything like this and you see it, your brain is immediately going to go into survival mode. Like, I got to protect myself from this. So the other officers end up getting back in. They avoid the sand, but then there's an oncoming dust storm. Now, a lot of you might think, well, dust storm, that can't be too crazy. But if anybody's ever seen a dust storm, and I've seen a couple, not in real time, but in videos and things like that people have taken, you can barely see your hand in front of your face. The Bedouin know how to traverse these deserts a lot better than other people do. So they know about the desert. They know about this. Now, what also happens is they just decide to wait. They're like, we'll get in the vehicle. We'll wait this thing out until either A, we get rescued, or B, we die. So Nikolai is here watching this the entire time. And he's, I mean, we all have a flight or fight response to whatever this is. This is we're either going to be more watchful, or we're just going to descend into madness. It's almost like a Lovecraftian tale, if you will. At first, he just sees this sand and he says, I'm just seeing sand. But as he's looking at it, he's noticing it is a cohesive unit. Instead of just little particles, it's a whole unit that is attacking them. The men go on to be rescued. Nikolai, of course, is questioned by his Soviet higher-ups, right? Now, if any of you have watched the Chernobyl documentary or know anything about Chernobyl, which we had talked about before, the Soviet chain of command is very strict. Like I said earlier, you think we're strict. You think our military is strict. It's a whole nother level. And they don't, on record, okay, quotations, on record, believe him, okay? Off record, they come up to him and they say, you know what? Hey, we believe you. We can't go on record because we'll look crazy, right? And this is the time of Stalin. We're talking about a Stalin-era Soviet Union. So you darn sure don't want to look like a weirdo or a crazy person in a Stalin-era regime, because Stalin was killing anybody that looked at him sideways. And we can go into that at another time. This same story is recounted on Paul Stonehill's YouTube channel. I got this from another YouTube channel that I watched his, and it's very interesting. So definitely check that out after the show. Don't do it during the show. I'm telling you, you'll be in trouble. But Nikolai goes on to say, hey, you know what? I was hallucinating the whole time. But remember, he had to save his career. He had to save his reputation, because that was the most important thing at the time. Now, what was this entity? Oh, I'm glad you asked, Robert. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We got some comments first. The Desert Walker. Yes, it is known as that. The Sand Runner was another one that they had called it. Very, very interesting. Jinn is from the Roman genius or spirit of the place. Very fascinating. Thank you very much for your comments. And if anybody else wants to comment, by all means, feel free. We read them on air. Several hundred years ago, an entity, a jinn, was thought to take people from this desert region. We have to remember something. So a little breakdown about the jinn. The jinn are very akin to human beings. When Allah created the jinn, he gave them free will to choose him or choose the other. Now, one of the main jinn was known as Iblis, or in Christian terms, Satan. He does not prostrate himself before Adam. So Allah says, okay, you know what? You want to do that? Fine. You go down to earth. I don't want you in heaven. You're not to be in heaven anymore. The interesting aspect of who Iblis was is that he was thought to be a jinn that was created from fire. Mankind wasn't created from fire. The jinn were created from fire. And they actually lived on the planet before humans. But Allah saw that they were wicked and then made them live in another dimension, which is a very interesting aspect, because there are other tales from other cultures that talk of these in between spirits and beings. So just to give you guys a little bit of backstory behind what we're going to be talking about. But the Sandrunner Jinn is associated obviously with deserts and arid regions, and they can move effortlessly through the sand, manipulate the sand around them, and even create illusions or obscure their presence. So nobody knows what they're doing, because in the desert, a lot of times people will see mirages, illusions. They think, oh, I haven't had water in a few days. I'm starting to see a lake, but it's really just sand. The mind will play tricks on you if you deprive it of certain things, such as if you turn off all the lights and you put on a blindfold, or you would be in a pitch black area, where you can't see your hand in front of your face. Your brain will literally create images in front of you to sort of substitute that sensory deprivation. Now, the Sandrunner Jinn also was part of a legend passed down from the Bedouin in this desert, right? And in one legend, a Bedouin was making camp for the night when he was surrounded by a sandstorm. When he wakes up, he is realizing that he is surrounded by living sand that is seeking to actually consume him. These jinn have been described as looking like humanoid creatures made out of sand, moving sand dunes, sand particles, as we have talked about before, all part of a manipulation process. Now, in still another legend, there is talk of nomads that notice a sand dune a little bit a ways from them that starts slowly chasing them, like them old Looney Tunes cartoons where something is coming up behind them and look back, and then it moves and look back. And this is basically what happened. They are worried, so they rush as fast as they can and just barely make their escape. Another explanation for what this thing could have been is called a div. A div is a monstrous creature in Middle Eastern lore that derives from Persian folklore, but was integrated into Islam and other countries like Armenia, Turkey, Albania, and other locations. In Islam, it is said that God created the div first, but the div, as we have learned in different religious texts, being the former masters of the world, they were disposed and exiled from the human world. They would end up occupying a space between the physical and metaphysical world, much like the jinn, but they are not the same as the jinn. Now, the souls of the wicked. So if you die in your own iniquity and you are a bad person, you can turn into a demon or a div after death. Sources point to Al-Rasi, who was an alchemist in the Islamic world, as the researcher behind that information. Also, in Islamic legends, they appear as villains, sorcerers, monsters, ogres, or even helpers of the protagonist. Much like Suleiman, who was actually Solomon in Christian texts, there were ways to entrap a div. Now, we have to remember, if we look at Solomon and we look outside of the Holy Scriptures, we can understand that he had a ring that he enslaved demons to build his temple for him. This is basically the same thing, but after defeating a div, one must attach a horseshoe, a needle, or an iron ring on their body to enslave them. A div can't be killed by physical combat, and the only way they can be truly destroyed is if you find the container that houses their soul and destroy it. Little something there for you guys. And finally, a gateway to paradise. According to Persian folklore, there is a gateway in the Rig Jinn that leads to a different dimension. Prophet Suleiman was said to make a flying carpet from the sand of this desert. The sand was hauled to the city of Kashan in Iran in order to build a garden. The silkworms that were feeding from the soil, as merchants saw when they would weave the threads of these carpets, would levitate off of the ground in an almost anti-gravity fashion. When Solomon learned of this, he went ahead and said, hey, make me a carpet from this material, from these silkworms. It took 10 years to make. Alexander the Great would go on to procure some of this material in his conquest of Persia, India, the known world. But he had everything in Persia that related to this destroyed, so the Persians could not create more carpets and best him in combat. So there you go. There is the Rig-e-Jin, or the Dunes of the Jinn, for you guys.
Solid, solid. So, do you got something next, or do you want me to bounce over to me?
Getting some comments here. I watch Paul also. Fascinating stories. Yes, indeed. There is also an Arab legend of a jinn stuck into a piece of basalt rock in that area. See the destruction of Atlantis. Yes, I know about that. I have read many tales of the jinn, as some of my people here, such as Spider and Apple, can attest to, that I am big into Islamic folklore, Middle Eastern folklore, all of it. So, but that is a topic for another time, which we will at some point get into. But my co-host here, he's got some heat coming at you. Let him know.
Now, this is something that we've both heard of, and we both watched a documentary about this once. Unless I had deja vu and didn't remember, like,
Maybe we're
'cause
gonna
I-
watch a documentary about
well,
it.
because I watched it off of Amazon,
Oh my
and I thought it was something that we had both seen because I'd seen it before. I thought, oh, we've talked about this on the show, but I'd seen it before, and I don't recall watching it here. So maybe I watched it by myself. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's about the Bridgewater Triangle, which we have talked about.
Was that a Small Town Monsters thing?
Nope.
No,
It
that was
wasn't.
Amazon. I saw that too. I'm trying to remember because I
It was
got
recommended with the other stuff because I
Did-
felt like we watched it one day.
But here's the thing: did I watch it before or after I went to Boston? Because then I
don't
could
remember.
pinpoint if we hung out then.
I don't remember, honestly.
For those of you that don't know, I went to Boston to do voice acting live in front of Bethesda, like Pete Hines, the video game studio. I got to go there and perform live. So there you go. There's a little backstory behind
Plug.
plugs.
But anyway, there's
Season
a
2's
documentary
coming.
of it on Amazon Prime if you guys want to follow up on this part. But the Bridgewater Triangle, it's an area about 200 square miles within the southeastern part of Massachusetts, between the towns of Freetown, Rehoboth, and just shy of Rockland, between Rockland and Abington. Okay. And there's been a lot of stuff that people supposedly have seen in there. There's been UFOs, poltergeists, orbs, Bigfoot, giant snakes, thunderbirds. And they do have some documented things that were confirmed in there. Like they've had cult activity, and not just like sometimes you hear cult activity and it's just people getting together in the woods, being, dressing up, doing things like that. But this is actually people who believed they were part of a satanic cult who would sacrifice animals and occasionally did murder some people. On the documentary, you will see a retired police officer who talks about some of the actual cult activity and some of the murders that they had to follow up on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting place. And there's a lot of tangible things there to look at. Unlike places like the Bermuda Triangle, where it's a big spot of ocean and you might not even know that you're there until you fall victim. Here, there's a lot of things people have seen. And one of the places is Hockomock Swamp, which is central to the area. Let's see, I'm trying to see what who named it. The Wampanoag. The Wampanoag native tribe called it that.
Interesting enough, just as a side note, they have found bones of giants in the Bridgewater Triangle. So
that as well. It played a role in King Philip's War. So if you don't know about that, look that up. King Philip was not a actual English king of any kind. It was a nickname that they gave to Metacomet, who was a Wampanoag chief. They called him King Philip, and he used to battle with the early English settlements there. His people called it the place where spirits dwell. English colonizers would later call it the Devil's Swamp, and they've seen flying creatures and ghosts there. The Freetown Fall River State Forest is where the cult activity was. Ritual murders by people claiming to be Satanists, as well as people who were in rising gangs at the time, plus a number of suicides.
I've
Gangs
laughed
and
about
that's
the
supposed to
rising
sound kind of
gangs,
like yeah, it
not the
sounds
rising
kind of
suicides. So
it sounds kind of strange being in
it
that
does.
part. Like you don't think about gang activity, but
No.
sometimes they can kind of get anywhere, I guess. Um, but and there's a number of stones like Profile Rock, which is supposed to look like a Native American if you look at it from the right angle. Solitude Stone, which is a stone that's been inscribed with a message, and it was supposedly found near a missing person's body. They called it Suicide Stone. And the rock has this carved into it: all ye who in future days walk by Nunkatesset stream, love not him who hummed his lay, cheerful to the parting beam, but the beauty that he wooed. What does it mean? Who knows? Nobody really has been able to find out. Supposedly, the Bridgewater State University, several of the buildings and rooms on the campus are supposed to be haunted. Um, Hornbein School, it's a one room schoolhouse built during the 1840s, and it's supposed to be haunted. And there's just a number of things that go on there. And I could go on and list like a ton of things here, and it would take up the rest of the show, but I'm not going to do that because I know we have a little bit more to talk about. But I am going to say that it's such an interesting place. The documentary on Amazon Prime is over an hour at
Yeah.
least. It's
Yeah.
lengthy, and there's a lot in it. It covers all of this stuff and more, and it is well worth the watch because there are so many things that happen there. I believe somebody supposedly even saw what they thought was Mothman there at one point,
Yep.
and that kind of makes sense too because Mothman, as a folklore figure, has been showing up a lot of different places within
Mhm.
the last 40 or 50 years, honestly.
Yeah.
We're still getting a lot of modern day accounts in the Chicago area.
Yep.
Um, so I tend to find that super, super interesting. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. It's less of a place where people get lost and go missing, but in some places they do because the forest is super thick. And we've talked about on the show many times, especially with Les Odell and a few of the other folks
Yeah.
that are woods people. When you go out into a thick wooded area and you assume, oh yeah, I'm gonna, I'll go this way for a while and then I'll just turn back and go home. If you don't have a
Right.
compass or if you don't have a way to get back, you can be lost
Yeah.
for hours,
Easily.
days,
Easily.
for weeks. You may never actually get back. You may never be found. And I don't want to scare people off from going off into the woods to go camping or something. But if you're going to go
Right.
to any place, make sure you are prepared with like compasses and whatnot.
Well, I'm not going to talk about it. We've talked about it before, but Aokigahara Forest in Japan at the base of Mount Fuji, people get lost in it because
Mhm.
it looks the same.
Yep.
So they get turned around and they try to go where they think the way out is and get lost, end up dying in the forest because starvation,
Mhm.
things like that. And Aokigahara is a very interesting location. I'm not talking about it tonight because we've talked about it before and it's more famous than a lot of other places that I have here. But to me, at some point, I would love to visit it.
Mm.
And what I've heard is they tell you, the guides and stuff say, do not go. There's a path, right? And the path is marked. And it says the whole time as you're walking it, do not deviate. And also, if you are feeling sad, talk to someone. It's almost like a broken English thing because the suicide rate. See, what people don't understand, and this is just a little history lesson in Japanese culture. Japanese culture is highly different from ours. Failure in Japanese culture is viewed as like the utmost sin, if you will, right? And so people that fail other people and break that honor code would just disappear and go into this forest looking to die. Now, a lot of people know the two famous goofball YouTubers whose name I won't mention. I'm not going to give you guys clout because I think you're
Mm.
trash people as a whole. We're taking pictures of bodies hanging in Suicide Forest. To me, that is just, it's wicked and it's wrong, and you should never do that because people went into that forest to die. There would be tents that they have found, and clothes and shoes and bodies hanging, and bodies that people have drank poison, and they die there because the base of Mount Fuji is thought to be the ascension to heaven, to their idea of heaven, where you can meet Amaterasu, the sun goddess, and every Japanese emperor is thought to have descended from Amaterasu. It's a whole other topic. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's a good point because again, you get lost in these places, and they do all look the same, and you can get despondent, and you can it can affect your mood, and just bad things can happen. So, but yeah, it's definitely a strange area. A lot of stuff still goes on today. People still see things, um, and I would like to go at some point, like in the future. I don't know how feasible it is because that's quite a ways away, but I would like to go and check out some places myself, just like I'd like to go to Point Pleasant and some other big places. Less to do investigation and more just to go and experience the area and,
The
and see what it
feeling,
feels
the
like,
feeling.
and just be a part of the history that's there. Although not be a part of the history in a way that, oh well, he went there and never came back.
You remember this uncanny earth? Those boys disappeared. They're not there
And
anymore.
Bridgewater
They're
Triangle.
gone.
So
Bridgewater Triangle. The boys went back to 1895.
and
And we're going to do that. We're going to go to the
yeah,
Bridgewater Triangle. We're also going to go to Point Pleasant. Point Pleasant is on one of the lists of trips to go to this year. And I would love to go to the Bridgewater Triangle, I think, next year. So 2024. We have a Patreon if you guys want to donate. This isn't a pledge drive. I'm not going to sell you guys a $65 tote bag.
yeah.
You're good to go.
It's just toss us some gas money for a future trip. That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
That's
we'll
it.
make everything work regardless.
And
So
we'll
it's not like
document
we're-
it, and we'll put it live on the show. So
Yeah.
as much as we can. Ingrain Cyclist says the amount of disappearances from camping, hiking in forest is shocking. Missing 411.
Yeah. That's the other one. That's another one. We
the
had
other
Chris
one. That's the
George
other one.
on,
Yeah,
and
we
he
had Chris
talked to
George.
us about it.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and you can still catch him relatively often. He's been on Night Dreams Talk Radio several times over the last year and a half. So we'd like to get him back on this show also. So
I'll be
if you
reaching
haven't
out
heard
to
our
him
episode,
at some point to get him on the show. So, yep.
yeah. So good stuff. What do we got next?
Next up, we're going to go to 46.77 degrees north by 23.52 degrees east into and if I pronounce this wrong, by all means, please correct me in the comments. The Hoia Basiu Forest in Romania. Now, situated to the west of the city of, I got to make sure I get this right because there's a lot of consonants and very little vowels. The Cluj-Napoca is a forest that many call the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. Some people have said that this forest is home to the devil in person, ghosts, and even aliens. In the 1960s, biologist Alexandru Sif photographed a flying object in the sky located above the forest. James Bogg says, the woods was a safe place when I was a kid. Doesn't feel the same now. And you have to wonder, James, because it was a safe place when I was a kid. I loved going to the woods. I was never worried about like wild animals and things like that. I'm not worried about wild animals now. Actually, that would be, better than whatever is out there now. And I have to wonder if all of the pollution chemicals that they have released into the air has sort of riled up these things, these creatures, these beasts. Like, for instance, the nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll in the New Mexico desert, all these places, I think that stirred up something. I think that stirred up something fierce. And I don't have any proof of this per se, but it's a hypothesis that I have that this nuclear energy released something or some things that were laid dormant. Anyways, I digress. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of this forest is its trees. The trees themselves are around 200 years old, and they are very young looking, and most of them are twisted in the trunk or they take on an unusual shape. So you'll have a trunk that kind of jets up and then looks like a scythe or a sickle. James says, I feel it's more of a sign of the times. Maybe our energy is what's changing the forest around us, which is a very interesting concept. In the center of this forest is a circle where nothing grows. They tested the soil, and the soil didn't produce any harmful activities or harmful bacteria or anything like that would prevent it. It just doesn't grow. This is where most of the paranormal events have happened. Some incidents that have occurred here are the disappearance of a shepherd and 200 of his sheep. They were never located. Gone. The disappearance of a 5-year-old girl for 5 years, who would then return later wearing the same exact clothes. Now, if we go back to, and I forget what episode this is, but by all means, please check out our older episodes. We talked about the missing 411, about a person who disappeared in one of the national parks and reappeared in Michigan at his father's door, like, hey, what's up? Been gone for a while, but I'm here now.
Wasn't he missing his shoes and things too?
It was something
Like
along
missing
those lines,
articles
or
of
he was
clothing?
gone for a long time and then returned. So, like I said, this is the same concept. People have also reported coming out of the forest with burns, severe rashes, headaches, and high fevers. Studies have also concluded that higher than usual radioactivity is produced by uranium present in the soil. So that might be the reason why plants don't grow. However, if we look at the radioactivity in places like this, right, we can see a pattern in other places that have high radioactivity. Rajasthan in India. Check that out. That's a whole nother thing where they say the gods had a battle and were dropping nuclear bombs in that area. Check that out. We did that, I think, a couple months ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we've touched on that a few times in
have.
the show's history so far.
We have. We're going to get into the Emil Barnea incident of 1968. In the same forest, in August of 1968, military technician Emil Barnea, his girlfriend, and their 2 friends head off into the forest. Now, Emil's girlfriend is looking around. She points out something in the sky. What could it be? They report seeing a shining silver disc. Emil was able to capture this photo before it could make a hastily retreat. These 4 people only watched the UFO for roughly 2 minutes before it would ascend back into the sky. But Emil was able to take those pictures quick and get them into the newspaper where they were printed. They went and checked the photos. They checked the negatives even, and they couldn't find evidence of tampering. A lot of people said it's weather balloons because that is always the main explanation for anything UFO related is UFOs.
Well, now it's not going to be weather balloons. Now it's going to be Chinese balloons.
All right, easy. And so they test it, and they test the negatives, and they say, no, this is legit. The Chinese spy balloons be all over history. Snake Burns. All right, Mr. Burns. Boo Earns or Burns? Anyways, not the point. So they look into this, and they find that the pictures weren't tampered with. Okay. Now, the reasons for the haunting is that some people believe the forest is actually haunted by peasants who were murdered there a long time ago. The forest itself holds quite a bit of history, and there is evidence of a settlement dating all the way back to the Neolithic period. Evidence suggests that people originally settled there in 6500 BC, and this makes it the oldest settlement in Romania itself. Other strange occurrences that have happened In this location, people have heard the sound of deer and horses stomping the ground, only to realize there are no deer or horses. So no neighbors. Some see orbs floating near trees, and when they go to take pictures, they see orbs that weren't there, or they see faces. Sometimes people actually see faces right in front of them, or there's cases where they see glowing eyes off in the woods watching them. So be careful where you tread if you head out to Romania. Now, I have a couple other things, but if you have something else, by all means.
Nope. Go ahead and get into that, and then we can start wrapping up.
So 34 degrees north and 12.74 degrees east sits one of the craziest anomalies that I have heard of in terms of just ruins themselves. Ruins you can actually visit. This is the Baalbek Temple in Lebanon. Located, yeah, you know about this. This is the most mysterious ruins of the entire Roman Empire, and it's located on the grounds of a Middle Eastern country. That shows you the vast expanse of the Roman Empire. On these grounds is a 2,000-year-old temple dedicated to Jupiter. However, the temple has no sites that mirror it at all. And there's no texts that actually explain the purpose of this temple. Now, obviously, the temple itself, or the area itself, is named for Baal, who is a Canaanite deity who was worshipped by the Jews, Phoenicians, and the Canaanites, obviously, but was called Jupiter by the Romans. It was thought that human sacrifices, especially child sacrifices, were said to appease this deity. So whenever there was crazy storms or political unrest, sacrificing children to this deity was said to be the end-all be-all to appease it. Sometimes 200 children were sacrificed, and other times in 310 BC, 500 children were sacrificed to this wicked deity. The priests would beat drums, play flutes, lyres, and tambourines to drown out the cries of anguished parents. Now, obviously, the temple was razed, and they got kind of a beating. So, but one legend states that Cain, the Cain from the Bible who slayed his brother Abel and was sent to the land of Nod, built it to hide from the wrath of God. Another legend says that giants built it at Nimrod's behest, and it would go on to be known as the Tower of Babel. And still yet another legend says that Solomon built it with the jinn's assistance as a palace for the Queen of Sheba. In 2018, Patrick Zachem came across a tunnel under Baalbek that he said was haunted. And in his words, I quote, "In 2018, during a visit to Baalbek, I came across a tunnel that was very haunted. The multitude of ghost vibes in there was quite interesting. So I tried right away to make a spiritual contact with whomever was there, but got nothing. Instead, I was shown vividly the statue of a male figure in white marble, sitting on a marble throne, similar a bit to a picture I had taken, and looking in my direction, but not necessarily at me. The marble statue was of a white male in his mid-30s with a stern and elongated face. It turned out to be that of the Emperor Augustus as a young man. The figure I was shown looks very similar to another pic that I had taken, and the throne he was sitting on looked like that of Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, with a difference that it was more squarish on the sides. The meaning to what I was shown still escapes me. What my spirit guides are trying to tell me by showing me this is anybody's guess, and that's what I have been trying to understand ever since this experience. Sometimes symbolic meanings come right away, and other times they take time. Finally, the last place that I have for you guys is located 30.32 degrees north by 35.4444 degrees east. And we were talking about the Devil's Prison in Petra, Jordan. Located in this ancient city is a stone slab. At this location, because if anybody has, you can go back to our previous episodes where we talk about Petra and the Nabateans. The devil and his demons are said to be trapped under a giant block of stone. Now, a key note to this whole thing is that the Nabateans are the ones who actually built Petra, and it is said that their pagan beliefs may have been the reason why Petra was built in honor of their pagan gods. Also, it is thought that the Nabateans and the giants of Iram came from the same place in Saudi Arabia, even though they may not have existed at the same time. While there is no solid connection between scripture and this giant block of stone, it is interesting to note that the book of Enoch, talking of Semyaza and his ilk, are thrown into the bowels of the earth. So it's interesting to note that maybe, just maybe, the devil and his fallen angels are located under this giant piece of stone. So if you head on out to Petra, just be careful what you're lifting up, because you may end up freeing the devil and his fallen angels to wreak havoc on your life. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode of This Uncanny Earth. I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. James Boggs, the Ingrain Cyclist, Apple Tree Jamboree, Cerebees, and Z-Man 142. Thank you guys for joining us. As always, we work hard and tirelessly each week to bring you guys the best content we possibly can. We have all sorts of good things coming up. As you guys may have known, I will be at the Haunted Heyman House in Sutton, West Virginia on March 26th at 2 p.m. doing an interview with the owner of the place. So you guys do not want to miss that. I will probably upload that Sunday night or Monday night. So make sure you guys are catching that, because it's going to be fantastic. Ingrain Cyclist, thank you so very much. Is Mr. Solomon growing a beard? I like it. Don't free the devil with that beard. Sir, I will not. This beard is legendary. I will not be freeing any devil. Thank you for joining us tonight, Deadpool. You are a fantastic person. Cerebees, even though you're a grumpy old man, I enjoy your company as well. James Boggs says, great show. You deserve a bigger audience. Thank you. No, thank you. That is very, I love that you have said that. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for subscribing, actually. Like, I appreciate you, man. Like, I love getting new people and talking to new people. Cerebee says, get off my lawn. I think you and my co-host will get along famously, because you are both grumpy old men, and I think you guys would just be best of friends. So we'll have to hook you guys up together, and you guys can hang out and be grumpy and yell at kids that don't exist because you guys are grumpy. So there you go. Z-Man says, you guys are awesome. No, you are awesome. We have coming up tomorrow, there's an all-new episode of the Saturday Spiritualist. What are you getting into tomorrow night?
It's a good question. I've been trying to throw it back and forth. I've been avoiding the big left-hand stuff to try to get some other things first, but I may just take the plunge and get right into it. In which case, I may delve into some dark areas, but we'll see.
He's going to be broadcasting live from a cave, so if that's what you guys want to know. And then coming up on Sunday, well, actually tomorrow, I will be streaming over at this. Well, no, it is the Uncanny Alchemist at this point. I totally forgot I changed my own name. It's Uncanny Alchemist. I'm working my way through Suikoden 5, a classic RPG from the PS2 era. Drop by, say hey. You can check that out on my Twitch channel, www.twitch.tv/Uncanny Alchemist. I'm over there. We actually streamed there tonight. A lot of you came over from Twitch, so thank you very much for that. And then when is your next? What do you have? What's going on Monday? What do you got going on Monday?
Monday is the next podcast episode. Podcast is, of course, audio only, and then it shows up on YouTube still in audio. And that'll be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And my topic will be cats.
Oh, I might have to Might have to drop in, leave a little
My
comment.
last episode was Muppets, so if you guys are interested in the Muppets, then you can go back and listen to that at your leisure. But this will be episode 7, and it will be about cats.
And before the Muppets was bowling, before bowling was anime, which I
That's
was a
right.
guest on. So go listen to those. Also, listen, last week's episode, the Philadelphia experiment. You don't want to miss that one. And I have found some new evidence based on that, and we'll be getting into that at some point in the future from a book that I have called Anti-Propulsion Technology. You guys definitely want to get that in your system. Also, coming up, what else do we have? When is your next Spirits Club video?
Well, that's a big deal, actually. I have a bit of an announcement for anybody that you guys will want to pay attention to.
Sassy.
Because the next Spirits Club is going to be live. It's not going to be pre-recorded because it's going to be my St. Patrick's Day episode. It'll be on Thursday, roughly 9:30, 10 o'clock, give or take, whenever I can get my daughter to go to bed. I will be putting the StreamYard link into the group for people to jump in at will and hang out with me as a public big deal for St. Patrick's Day.
What day is
So
that?
anybody-
Thursday?
Thursday.
I'll be there. I'm going to hang out with you, bro.
I'm going to be slamming Irish car bombs. If you guys don't know what they are, I'm going to show you
Let's
how
get
to
slammed together. I mean, yeah. Nah, you know what? That ain't it, Chief. That ain't it, Chief.
That's an entirely different kind of channel.
That's a show that's probably for OnlyFans. So
that's right. But yeah, you guys will all be able to join me if you want. Spread the word, as long as nobody acts too inappropriately. I know we're all going to be having some drinks and things. And it's going to get a little crazy, but as long as you guys don't charge and be like, "Let me tell you about these political things," I believe
you will get das Boot. You will get das Boot. I'll be there. So it'll be a co-opted. I will co-opt that stream for my own devilish things.
And I'll probably use my phone to stream at that time to make sure that it doesn't cut me off, because I know sometimes that happens.
It didn't tonight. It actually worked out pretty well.
It didn't, crossing them fingers.
Cross your eyes and dot your T's.
I'll have my phone available to make sure. So come hang out with me.
Come here.
I'll have the link posted in the group. If you are not in the group yet, This Uncanny Earth Official, the group on Facebook. If it says you need approval, we will approve you. I guarantee you.
We might do a credit background check, because then make sure your credit's good. I'm kidding. Come through, join, hang out, make comments, post, whatever you got to do. Right. Do whatever you got to do. And then after that, we just have another episode of This Uncanny Earth, which we have a guest, but I'm not going to tell you that yet. We're going to ease into that one. And don't forget, 2 weeks from this Sunday, I'll be at the Haunted Heyman doing my thing. You know what your boy do, and I do it all the time because this is the show, and we're going to make it happen. And we appreciate everybody that's come along for the ride. And for anybody that wants to know what is going on in the background of me, 2 maps, King Tut, Treasures book. This book is a Time Life book. And I don't know what this is because I just put this here. My books are right here. Right. All this is all good stuff. I got more books.
Before we get started on his books, we got to get going. We'll get on his books and we'll get to go.
Of course, that's the Flatwoods Monster right here. This is the Flatwoods Monster. And here is the Fallout mask that I got from Les Odell from, I think it was Point Pleasant. He went down to the Mothman Festival and he brought me that back and he sent it to me. And this is a painting by Leah Carpenter. It is an amazing painting, and I put it there. And that's it. I don't know. This is show and tell. This is ran its course. We love you guys. You guys are freaking amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we can't wait to see you next week for another amazing episode of This Uncanny Earth. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.